BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNed88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And just a quick reminder, every Monday is Zodiac Mondays. Wednesday is an Ask Me Anything. That's an AMA, so please drop your questions below for things that you would like discussed here on the show. And Friday is an Anything Goes. Any subject is fair game, mostly talking about true crime, serial killers, the Zodiac Killer, but any subject is welcome. All right, so please share some ideas in the comment section about what you would like to hear about on this channel, and let's get started. Okay, hello everybody. Today is Wednesday, time for the AMA. Welcome to the show. This is the Ask Me Anything, where I respond to your questions and comments, and we have a discussion, we go through it together. So I would like to begin with some things about the Zodiac Killer. But first, I want to remind you all that you can download the show for free at LaunchPad DM. There's a link to that in the description box, just the audio in the pure podcast format. If you would like to download the video of this show, you can do that using YouTube Premium. I use YouTube Premium. I'm a big fan. I take a lot of shows on the go now, and I've been watching all kinds of things when I don't have the Wi-Fi and such. But free downloads are available at LaunchPad DM, and there are also some bonus episodes in there. Sometimes there is a first draft or first cut of the episode that doesn't make it out to YouTube, and in the past I was just uploading those onto YouTube anyway, but I'm just going to be putting those on the LaunchPad. LaunchPad DM is like a user-generated platform for Podcast One. The link is in the description box there. Now I would like to begin with some things about the Zodiac Killer mystery and talking about Michael Morford's suspect McDuff, also known as Suspect Mason, also known simply as Mac. Those are not his legal names, of course, because it's best just not to say his legal name for now, so we'll be referring to him as one of those three things, if not all three. Michael Morford thinks that he may have found the Zodiac Killer, and that it is this guy, Suspect McDuff. If you follow the Zodiac Killer mystery at all, you've probably heard something about him, and I did a recent episode talking about the murders that took place in 68 and 69, and the points that I challenged Morph on were that in 1968, his suspect would have been 23 years old. I disagreed, and I said I thought the Zodiac Killer would have been mid-30s to early 40s. And then I also said that he doesn't seem to have an enormous amount of education in math. Instead, his degree was in sociology, and I thought the Zodiac Killer was not a mathematician necessarily, maybe a scientist, or how about an architect, or even if he's not extremely well educated in math or science, then maybe he is a pilot or a sailor, somebody who would have learned about geometrics and angles and all of that stuff. And then the other thing that I noticed was that he was 5 feet 8 inches tall, and I thought that was just borderline, like the lowest possible height estimate for a Zodiac Killer suspect. Like if you're dealing with suspects who are 5'6" or 5'7", I'm not the person who is going to think very highly of that suspect. 5'8" to 6 feet tall is where I think is the more credible estimations of a Zodiac Killer suspect. Mike Morford wrote to me at BlackBoxOnlineRadio at AOL.com. Anybody can write the show there, and he sent in an email saying, "Interesting video presentation on McDuff. I would respectfully disagree with you on a few points. In multiple police reports, Vallejo, Napa, San Francisco, all describe the Zodiac as around 5 feet 200 pounds. Suspect McDuff had a chubby build with a round, large face, as mentioned by Mike Migeot. I also think that you are assuming the Zodiac had some math training or was a genius. While it's possible, there is no proof of that. My suspect attended at least 6 years of college that I know of, so while he may not be a genius, I certainly do not think he was dumb. Also, of interest, his wife found a cipher book in his belongings, the book experts believe the Zodiac used in his ciphers. Something you did not mention in the video is that he bears a likeness to both the San Francisco Police Department sketch and the Mystery Man sketch at Lake Berryessa. Also, his writing was not mentioned. Anyhow, just wanted to clarify a few points. Mike Morford. Big thank you to Morph for listening to the show and contacting me. So I had a response for him because I wanted to know some clarity in my own right, because I had received a message from Tom Voigt, one that I had actually asked him if he would give a comment about Mike Morford's new Zodiac killer suspect, and Tom Voigt said that he wasn't very impressed, but he also said something about how there's this rumor going around that law enforcement did not ask Morph to take everything off ZodiacKillerSite.com about suspect McDuff, and that's why people were contacting me, asking me what do I think about this new suspect, because they're saying, hey, it appears that somebody has asked Morph to take down his threads on this suspect McDuff. Does that mean that he's the guy? Does that mean that law enforcement is zeroing in on a particular suspect? So I wrote to Morph and I said, hey, thanks for contacting me. I appreciate the clarity. May I ask, how confident are you that you have solved the Zodiac mystery? I.e., is this really the guy? By the way, did law enforcement ask you to take down any threads or discussions about suspect McDuff? Tom Voigt contacted me and said it wasn't law enforcement, it was most likely the family that requested this, but he didn't say his source on that. So, ZodiacKiller.com, which is run by Tom Voigt, is reported to be the only site that is connected to law enforcement or has a working relationship with them. So I thought, is it possible that Tom Voigt had learned something that I had not? And I just wanted to hear Mike Morford in his own words. What really happened with that? Did he get some instruction from somebody else to take down those threads? Was it a family member, or was it the police or some other type of investigator? What really happened? So Morph responded to me by saying, law enforcement suggested that I do not put too much out there about this guy. I'm confident. I'm right. This is the guy. How long will it take to investigate? I have no idea. And he signed it off, Mike Morford. Much appreciated to Morph for just trying to set the record straight and talking to me at all about his new suspect. I'll believe it when it happens, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but you heard my stance on that. But here's the thing. Respectful disagreements are totally welcome. If you think that this guy, suspect Mason, suspect McDuff, Mac, all those names that he's known by online, is the guy, please discuss him in the comments section below. If you think that he is not, and that Mike Morford has the wrong guy, and the Zodiac Killer is still out there, I would also like to hear about why you thought about that and came to the conclusion. Anyway, I hope that within our lifetimes, this mystery is solved, no matter which suspect or which group of people it was, or even if it's the hoax theory. I would like to know how and why this is going to come to an end. Okay. Our next comment comes to us from Albert Forel on the most recent Zodiac Mondays episode, and he says, how do you stay sane diving into all of this? And talking about the episode that I did called the Zodiac Manson Son of Sam Twisted Rant. I mean, we're talking about the links that could exist among those murders, as well as the murder of Arliss Perry. And I did put a little bit of thought into Albert's question, and I think the best way to answer this is finding the difference between a coincidence and a circumstantial case. Some people will break this down as simply as saying, listen to many, follow no one, and always try to be on the side of the truth, not just choosing a side and sticking to it. But really, it's about that, finding the difference between a coincidence and a circumstantial case. Sometimes people are just going to zone in on a coincidence. Two things are happening at the same time, but that does not mean that there is a genuine connection. It could just be that there is a coincidence. Maybe two things happened at the same time. Maybe this person was in a town at the same time a murder took place, but it doesn't mean that that person was the murderer. However, a circumstantial case is when a lot of those pieces of evidence begin to pile up. And I think a great example of this is Drew Beeson's book, Sighting In on the Zodiac Killer, which talks about his suspect, Donald Lee Cheney. and he found so many clues that suggest that Don Chaney could have been the Zodiac, and Don Chaney was somewhat overlooked for many years. He's the guy who was heavily connected to Arthur Lee Allen. Robert Graysmith referenced Don Chaney many times in his Zodiac Killer writings. Alright, and moving onward with the AMA, we have a series of questions that have come from Mr. Barlow, and because this is an Ask Me Anything, it's nice to have all the questions just done in a list here. Mr. Barlow writes, Nid, love your channel. It might be the best channel on YouTube for true crime. If we go by the process of elimination, which known suspects can we get rid of? There are some additional questions that are done as a follow-up to this, but I would like to begin by saying, number one, Arthur Lee Allen. I don't think it is possible to say that Arthur Lee Allen did everything by himself. As the Zodiac Killer, like the only person involved with it, no. I think he should be eliminated because of, well, everything done with the forensic material, particularly his DNA and side palm print / writer's palm testing. He could be viewed as an active participant, but he should immediately be de-escalated. The next one here is, Zodiac's writing was definitely on the desk at Riverside. Who was or was not there at the time of the Bates murder? Mr. Barlow, I might challenge you. I'm not completely convinced that the handwriting on the desktop poem that was found after the murder of Sherry Jo Bates is the same. It does look similar, though. Also, this is the one that talks about blood spilled all over her dress. Oh well, it was red anyway. That seems like something that is quite different than the Zodiac's verbiage, but it's possible. It's possible. Which suspects were in Riverside? Definitely Ross Sullivan. That's why he's a Zodiac suspect, period. Is because he was at the RCC, the Riverside City College, and he also, long story short is he resembles the composite that was done after the Stein shooting, as well as his odd behavior. Ross Sullivan was actually a high-functioning paranoid schizophrenic, but a lot of people have suspects that they can place in the nearby area. Shel Cavalli had a connection to Corona, California, which is near to Riverside, and then many people point out that their suspects didn't stay in one place for a long time. They would move around California for various reasons. I mean, I certainly don't stay in the same city every single day of every year, so I can comprehend that. But we have a print from Paul Stein's cab. Who can we eliminate? That's the next question. This is a hard one, because sometimes, even if somebody's fingerprints do not match, that doesn't mean that they are eliminated. The finding could be inconclusive. There can be interference, like if it's like something from the Stein shooting where there's that fingerprint that is somewhat imprinted in something. If there is like that type of interference there, I once said that it had been imprinted in the blood, but in my interview with Mark Hewitt, he corrected me by saying that it has some interference in it that could be blood or another substance. And here's the next question, though. Which suspects had serious mental health diagnoses? Who didn't? Brilliant question. Here's one that maybe I can actually answer. Firstly, we said Ross Sullivan. He was a schizophrenic. Richard Gaikowski, schizophrenic. Ted Kaczynski, schizophrenic. Lawrence Kane, frontal lobe injury. And those are just the ones off the top of my head. And 90% of the others had serious impulse control. And 95% of Zodiac Killer suspects were just really big jerks when they could get away with it. Frank Dryman Valentine, Donald Lee Booyock, and even, to a certain extent, Donald Lee Cheney, who would definitely had somewhat of a nasty side. Next question. We have a lot of Zodiac handwriting samples. Which suspect's handwriting is most similar? Any of them? The two that I have said are the most similar are Don Cheney and Hal Snook. However, Mike Morford did send me a handwriting sample from suspect McDuff, and not gonna lie to you, if that is his handwriting, I mean, I'm just got some little snippet that has been shared to me. It looks very similar, so I think that he could even fit into that pot. I'm quite curious what's going to happen with suspect McDuff. If it's going to turn out that Mike Morford found the guy, I'm kind of on the edge of my seat, to be honest. Even though I didn't think extraordinarily high of him to begin with, I just want to know the truth, just like anybody else. So, some people think, though, about this question, about the serious mental health diagnoses. They think that the Zodiac killer could not have been a schizophrenic or somebody who is dealing with any type of impulse control. The Zodiac was perhaps a sociopath, psychopath, or narcissist, or some combination of those three. But the Zodiac was in control. A schizophrenic / heavy drug user would be someone who is out of control. And I think that both are worthy of debate or discussion. I was quite critical of Ross Sullivan when I did the episode Ross Sullivan Timeline, talking about how Ross Sullivan once just snapped, and he was arrested for a variant of indecent exposure and disorderly conduct for running around naked and trapping a man in a phone booth. And I was like, that's just not the Zodiac killer. The Zodiac is composed, articulate. The Zodiac is someone who talks in complete sentences with very specific and precise meanings, like in the Z13 cipher letter talking about my bus bomb got swamped out from the rain we had a while back. I mean, there is intent, there is direction, and it's not obnoxious. And then also another suspect, Richard Gaikowski, was somebody who was a schizophrenic and heavy drug user. Well, I mean, that also shows someone who has a mental state that should be viewed as out of control. So I'm very skeptical of these guys. It's not impossible. It's not impossible. I definitely think Ross Sullivan should be pretty close to elimination. He is too big, 6'2", 300 pounds, when really we're looking for someone 5'8" to 6 feet tall, 200 to 220 pounds. Absolutely too big, and he is not very well educated, mentally unstable to the point where he is going to be losing control. Of course, I do give credit to the person who said, now, is there any possibility that Ross Sullivan could have been on or off his meds at the time of the Zodiac crises? And I think that Sullivan even has an alibi for part of the summer of 1969, but not in a good way. I think he should be pretty close to almost certain elimination. And I did an episode once called Zodiac Richard Gaikowski AMA, when I was discussing Richard Gaikowski with Tom Voigt via email, and I'd say Gaikowski went from a 5 out of 10 to a 6 out of 10 in my book, but that still means that I do not think he was the Zodiac killer for just those reasons. It's schizophrenic, heavy drug user. That means that, yeah, okay, maybe he committed some crimes, but, he had the ability to commit crimes, rather. But that doesn't mean that he would have been in complete control of his mental faculties for the summer of 1969. And this is my issue with Richard Gaikowski as a Zodiac killer suspect. It's not the canonical crimes, 1968 to 69. It's trying to connect him to murders as early as the murder of Ray Davis in 1962, and then just to say that Geik is this master criminal who is just murdering people up and down California, maybe even before that, and nobody noticed. An undiagnosed schizophrenic and heavy drug user, nobody seems to bat an eyelash. I was like, okay, I might as well write letters about this stuff. No one's paying attention to what I'm doing. I mean, I just don't have the best vibe about that. One person whom I do think could have been a schizophrenic and had the brain to be the Zodiac killer is Theodore Kaczynski. I'm not saying that the Unabomber was the Zodiac killer. All I said was he had the brain for it. And this is something else that Mark Hewitt did share with me. Mark Hewitt is the author of the book Exposed, talking about Ted Kaczynski as a Zodiac killer suspect. And he said that Kaczynski was actually given a provisional diagnosis of being a paranoid schizophrenic. In short, the examination was interrupted, but the psychiatrist was leaning that way. Kaczynski is some guy who would have been mostly well-composed, except for opportune moments. I heard in one Unabomber documentary that Ted Kaczynski once started striking an axe at somebody's home when they weren't around. Like, he would break out in fits of rage, but from time to time. But overall, he seemed like someone who is very methodical and calculating. The kind of guy that pulls pubic hairs out of a toilet in a restroom so he can send it in with the bombs and plant fake DNA evidence. very methodical and calculating, and that's just it. Ted Kaczynski was a high-functioning paranoid schizophrenic who had the cold, methodical, and calculating faculties. The way that Geik and Sullivan are described, I do not think that they were the Zodiac killer, and anybody is welcome to discuss that in the comments section with me. Mr. Barlow, excellent set of questions. Good stuff for an AMA. And anybody else, please put your questions and comments below, and maybe they'll end up on a future AMA here.
You are listening to Black Box Online Radio.
This show is brought to you by TeeSpring. Feel free to check out the merchandise. Almost all sizes and colors are listed.
Black Box Online Radio. And remember YouTube Premium. You can download the show, take it on the go, anywhere and anyhow.
Please like and subscribe. Grazie mille.
I would like to go on to somewhat of an extended comment/discussion, and I was having this with Chad, who is a listener to the show, and he was doing this on Facebook. My personal Facebook is in the description box here. Anybody can also follow the show, Black Box Online Radio, on Facebook if you would like to get in touch or share some things about any of these true crime cases that we're talking about. And Chad had shared something with me recently about the Zodiac killer when he said, "I don't even think the Zodiac is real. It's unrelated crimes that Graysmith tried to connect to sell papers, and boy did he get rich as fuck off those totally inaccurate books. Lake Berryessa was a copycat. One of those detectives was caught writing fake letters to the paper about how great he was and why. Why and what would stop him from deciding to be a hero and catching the Zodiac? But it blew up beyond his control. I love the Zodiac, though, mainly because I love to see them taunted, and I am now in control of all things." That last part is written in all caps. Just wanted to say that. And I have read that comment off on a previous AMA, but Chad had shared something with me recently about that theory, because I noticed that his comment that I had just read there is very similar to what Thomas Henry Horn talks about in the book The Myth of the Zodiac Killer, which is also available in smaller books. Like I did a book discussion on the Great Zodiac Killer Hoax of 1986, and now all those small segments have been put into one book, The Myth of the Zodiac Killer, and anyone can read it for themselves, and you can also hear both of those book discussions here on this channel, The Great Zodiac Killer Hoax of 1986 or The Myth of the Zodiac Killer. I have playlists on both of them. And he was talking about the Zodiac hoax theory. That is the idea that one person wrote letters taking credit for murders that he did not commit, and that person has been identified as Hal Snook, and that's Thomas Henry Horn's claim. And then Chad sent me something that was really quite different when he said that he disagreed with Thomas Henry Horn, and I think Horn is way off. And I was like, well, why do you think that he is way off if you just put forward a theory that sounds very similar to his? And he says, Graysmith is a liar. Who knows after that? And that's a very good point, because in the hoax theory, as I kind of just rambled on for a second, there are three major claims. The first is Robert Graysmith lied in his 1986 book Zodiac. The second is the person who wrote the letters did not commit all of the murders. And the third is that letter writer has been identified as Hal Snook, according to Thomas Henry Horn. That is his theory. And, I mean, everyone has their own Zodiac killer theory, right? So it sounds like Chad is only in agreement with the first part. Robert Graysmith was a liar, and maybe multiple killers, but he apparently doesn't seem to think that Hal Snook wrote the letters or that he was responsible for that. And that heavily, heavily changes the narrative, because, I mean, Thomas Henry Horn openly discussed this in those books that I was talking about. When we look at who could have written the Zodiac Killer letters, if it is a hoax and someone is writing letters taking credit for murders that they did not commit, hoax or fraud or deception, they're trying to make you think it's one person when it's actually many people, that one of the people that Thomas Horn first looked into was none other than Robert Graysmith, saying that Graysmith could have engineered this all from the beginning. This was his deceptive plot to create this type of serial killer fiction. Then he would go on, write a book about it, and make lots of money. And Graysmith now is a millionaire because of that, as well as selling the movie rights to some of his other stuff. But I digress from that. But what Thomas Horn's response was, he looked into Graysmith, he looked into Richard Gaikowski, who was actually at the top of his short list of suspects for writing the letters. It just turned out to be Hal Snook in his mind is the person responsible. Well, that opens up an entire can of worms now, because you have this guy, Hal Snook, who was a Napa County deputy, forensic scientist, chemist. He definitely would have had the brain for creating the Zodiac killer letters, but did he actually write them? A very harsh critic of the Zodiac hoax theory is none other than Tom Voigt, if anything, because he says he knew Hal Snook personally. Hal Snook was actually a contributor to ZodiacKiller.com for a while back in the day, and he simply disagrees with that on all grounds that Hal Snook didn't write the letters. But we did have one question about that recently, because I had posted a document from Napa County that had been written after the Lake Berryessa report. After the Lake Berryessa stabbing, it was a report from Lake Berryessa. And this is from Augustine Kriv, who said, "The handwriting that you showed at 29 minutes and 40 seconds in your video, does that belong to the suspect? It says Napa County Sheriff's Department." And he was talking about the handwriting of Hal Snook, who was someone who started out as a Napa County deputy, and then he went on to become a suspect, not for committing all of the murders. He is only a suspect for writing the letters. And I believe, if I understand the hoax theory, it's that Hal Snook would have designed the ciphers. However, he most likely had somebody else, an active participant in the Zodiac mystery, composing them for him. And the person who has been accused of composing those ciphers or writing them out, like Hal Snook would have made the message, he would have made the encoded characters, like all of those symbols that you see, that was all Hal Snook's design. And then Robert Graysmith would have been the person who sat down and did the copying, because as a cartoonist, Graysmith was very skilled at that. And you can discuss that one in the comments section as well, if you think of the hoax theory is right, or if you think that more suspect is right, or Don Chaney, or maybe there's somebody else in the Zodiac world that you are looking at. Now, moving on to something about the Manson family, we have one comment that came in on Sons of Sam Manson Family Connection, and this is from Apex Prowler, who says, "I think that Bruce Davis is and was CIA. He was tight with not only Charles Manson, but cancer researcher, the respected Dr. Oxner out of the New Orleans. Dr. Oxner caused the death of his grandson and injured his granddaughter by giving both a vaccine that he stood up for. Oswald was around Dr. Oxner's at the same time as Bruce. Another tidbit is the trash bag killer Patrick Kearney and Oswald were travel buddies in the military. It's not a stretch to say that Bruce knew Oswald and Kearney." Talking about Bruce Davis, Charles Manson's right-hand man, the person who becomes the biggest suspect in the Zodiac-Manson connection. And in the most recent episode, I was talking about Howard Davis and his appearance on the Tate-LaBianca radio program, and they openly asked him, "In your mind, is Bruce Davis the Zodiac killer?" And he said yes. Now, Bruce Davis working with the CIA, I think Bruce Davis is/was CIA. I did too for a while, absolutely, in 2020. I said that if there were any people from the Manson family who could have been more involved with the CIA than we would expect, it would be either Bruce Davis or Lynette Squeaky Fromme. And I would choose Bruce Davis because he was always the rover of the group. He's always in some other place. Like if you read Paul Watkins's book, My Life with Charles Manson, he's like, oh yeah, they're always just picking up Bruce Davis from some different place, whether it's Malibu or San Diego or something like that. And Bruce Davis allegedly spent the fall and winter of 1968 to 69 in England, continental Europe, and maybe even going to North Africa as well. So he is around the world just doing God knows what. And I was very suspicious of that. And I can't say I've had a reversal on that or that I disagree with you, Apex Prowler. I was simply forced to say I don't know if Bruce Davis or Lynette Squeaky Fromme was a CIA operative or a greater CIA informant where they were doing something that was more than meets the eye. Because Squeaky is the one who goes on to pull a gun on President Gerald Ford, and she said that she could have shot him. She could have gotten 2 shots off, but she chose not to, and she spent, what was it? Was it 34 years in prison? And then she was released, and one of the few Manson family members who was actually released. Squeaky was also Charles Manson's favorite girl, and she was one of the people who never renounced her support for Charles Manson, and she went on to write a book called Reflection, but it's spelled Reflexion, and that shares a lot of things about her experiences. So I was even just wanting to know if one of those two could have been the greater CIA presence, or maybe they have all just been a bunch of crackpots who were under the influence of drugs. That's why I said I can't endorse it. I can't say that I know it as a fact. I'm just going to have to play the uncertainty card right now. Now, Thomas Henry Horan, the guy that we were just talking about with the Zodiac hoax theory, had his own idea about the Manson family and a greater CIA operative. He didn't say Bruce Davis. He didn't say Squeaky. He said Mary Bruner, the kind of person who's closer to Charles Manson, his girlfriend, before he truly becomes the gardener of Ashbury Haight and so on. And he says that because of where she was living at the time, and that how she could have groomed Charles Manson into the person that he was. A lot of his theories that you can hear on the Stones Unturned podcast talk about how Charles Manson isn't actually the person in control. And as I was going through some things about the Tate-LaBianca radio program, I wanted to cross-reference them with things that I had heard on the Stones Unturned podcast and see where is everybody in agreement and where does everybody disagree. One comment that was shared by Thomas Henry Horan is that he seems to think that the Tate-LaBianca murders that took place in 1969, the murder of Sharon Tate and her friends, as well as Lino and Rosemary LaBianca, that was the next day, of course, those were not necessarily orchestrated by Charles Manson. In fact, he thinks that Charles Manson was not the architect, and he would interpret some comments in a very odd way, like when Charles Manson would tell the girls, all right, go with Tex and do whatever he says. That would make it sound like Tex Watson is actually the person who is the leader, and that Charles Manson is telling his girls to go with some other guy, like he's doing something for somebody else. Charlie isn't at the top. Charles Manson is the guy who is actually beneath Tex Watson. I am very, very skeptical of this because there are two ideas that are shared in that. One is that the Tate-LaBianca murders were not a drug deal gone wrong. It wasn't because Charles Manson wanted to get revenge on society. It was a prostitution deal gone wrong, or a pornography deal gone wrong, or that if there was a drug deal, that just means that Tex Watson was connected to a larger criminal network. I mean, these guys didn't come from nowhere. Paul Watkins, Tex Watson, Bruce Davis, they interacted with many other people, and that drugs may have been involved, but it was primarily Charlie was pimping out the girls, Charles Manson that is, and that they were supposed to be doing some things that were involved with somebody in the Tate house, the house at Cielo Drive on the night of the murders, and there is some type of deal that could have gone wrong. But another theory that has been put forward by Thomas Henry Horan is that the reason why people can't find a motive for the Tate-LaBianca murders is because they didn't actually commit those murders. That all of those people like Susan Atkins, Tex Watson, as well as even Leslie Van Houten, who was involved with the LaBianca murders, Patricia Krenwinkel, and all those people didn't commit the murders. Somebody else did. And that they've been brainwashed to thinking that they did because of MK Ultra, and they've all been given false memories. I don't subscribe to that. I don't believe that, only because of insufficient evidence. I'm always open to being corrected. I get that MK Ultra is a real thing. The CIA is doing experiments with mind control, but did that actually happen? I'm not convinced at all. As I've been going through the Tate-LaBianca radio program, they talked about the motive for the Tate-LaBianca murders, and in fact, the host of it, whose name is Brian Davis, many people out there named Davis, and he was saying that the reason why he is hosting the show is to answer one question: why? Why were the people murdered in the Tate house, and then Lino and Rosemary LaBianca murdered by the Manson family? And they've been going through a lot of things like trial transcripts and interview transcripts, and it is quite shocking to learn some of the things that they uncover. When people think that the reason why Sharon Tate was murdered was a drug deal gone wrong, when I was first approached about that, I had no idea what people were talking about. I was like, a drug deal gone wrong? Well, how does that factor into things? And it appears that two people who were murdered with Sharon Tate were Wojtek Frykowski and Jay Sebring. Jay Sebring is the hairdresser to the stars, and Wojtek Frykowski is the boyfriend of Abigail Folger, who's a friend of Sharon Tate, and Abigail Folger is the heiress to the Folgers' coffee fortune, and, well, I want to stay on page with one single theory. The drug deal gone wrong is that they were supposed to provide drugs to some member of the Manson family, or there's supposed to be some type of exchange between drugs and money, and somebody comes up short. And then this starts the altercation, and that this is all connected to the drug trade. Ivor Davis, IVOR, Ivor Davis is the guy who really promotes that theory and has a lot to say about that. But the other more conventional theory is simply that Charles Manson wanted to get revenge on the music industry establishment. Charles Manson openly said in an interview once, and if anybody... Well, I'll go back and find that clip, and I might do a full episode on the comments. It was the one that they did about Charles Manson and his relationship with the Beach Boys, that documentary. The name has escaped me. But I'll go back and find the clip where Charles Manson is openly saying that the reason why people were murdered at Cielo Drive was because Terry Melcher broke a contract. Terry Melcher is the son of Doris Day, and he was the record producer who was supposed to get Charlie into the music world. However, Charlie felt that he had been cheated out of that, or that people are taking his songs, and that, or that they are taking stuff from him, or he isn't getting the credit that he deserves, and he's not breaking into the music world as an insider. So that's why they were murdered, because it was about getting revenge on the media elites. It was about getting revenge on the music industry elites, and the house at Cielo Drive was a representation of that. And not only that, Charles Manson openly said that he did not know that Sharon Tate was going to be in the house. He didn't know that she was going to be there. They were just supposed to cause the trouble and the destruction, and I'm the devil and I'm here to do the devil's business. And she got caught in the, not crossfire, but caught in the knife slashing, if you will. I don't mean to be crude or anything, or to be morbid, but that seems to be what happened. As far as Lino and Rosemary LaBianca go, I was discussing this with Chad as well, and he said that there could have been a larger connection to organized crime. What Charles Manson's admission was from that Beach Boys documentary that I mentioned is that Lino and Rosemary LaBianca had to die because they were in possession of a black phone book that had certain names and pieces of info, and some people have their own theories that this was meant to just start a war against any form of media elite or any form of people who were in a certain circle, and Charles Manson wanted to penetrate that inner circle and just go on some massive kill rampage, not by using his own hand, but by getting people like Tex Watson and Susan Atkins and Patricia Krenwinkel to do the murders for him. If you do get a chance to listen to the Tate-LaBianca radio program, they go through lots of transcripts, as I said, and one thing that they shared, and this might sound absolutely mundane to you, or maybe this will blow your mind, is that there could have been a knife switch between Linda Kasabian and Susan Atkins on the night that Sharon Tate was murdered. Some people might be like, yeah, so what? Other people would be like, oh my gosh, that is just shocking. Linda Kasabian was the person who was supposed to be the lookout, and she was also supposed to be the getaway driver. Somebody once said that the only reason why Linda Kasabian was in the house, or the only reason why Linda Kasabian went to the house and waited outside, was because she had a valid California driver's license. But as I understand, California didn't put photos on the driver's licenses until the early 1970s, and this crime occurred in 1969. And Linda Kasabian also becomes an asset to the prosecution to testify against them, and she was not convicted of the murders the way that other people were. So if there actually is some type of knife switch where she's holding a knife and hands it to Susan Atkins, then she would become involved with that. And that means she's not just the lookout, she's not just the getaway driver. And one documentary that I do remember is simply just called Manson. It was available on the YouTube movies channel, like where you can just watch free YouTube movies. And it was a documentary, but it goes back and forth between the documentary thing where they're talking to real people and then very extended reenactments. I thought that it was going to be like a dramatization, like a drama film that was based on the case, but it goes back and forth between the real stories and then the dramatic recreations. And the way that they described it was, Linda Kasabian is the lookout, right? And then Susan Atkins, Patricia Krenwinkel, and Tex Watson are entering the house, and they are committing the murders of Sharon Tate, Wojtek Frykowski, Jay Sebring, and Abigail Folger. And then Stephen Parent is somebody there who, some people think that he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Other people think that he was someone who was a little bit more connected to the criminal world. He is shot from in the, he's already shot, so he's not in the house, but he is murdered as well. And then they come out, and then Linda Kasabian is just pushed to the side, and Tex Watson starts driving the car. And that's the one where she talks about how the people are just complaining about how their hands feel like they're on fire because they've been stabbing people, and the knife has been striking bone, and they're just all kinds of descriptions on how the murders were committed. But that just begs the question, why? Was it a drug deal gone wrong? Was it a prostitution deal gone wrong? Was it about getting revenge on the media elites? Or was it about creating this type of race war as a fiction to do something that was, well, that's a whole nother extended story. Some people think that the term helter-skelter is used for a particular reason, that it was about creating a fictional race war between blacks and whites, and that they wanted to commit these murders, the Tate murders and the LaBianca murders, and they wanted to blame them on the African American community, the Black Panthers, and so on. And they thought that by doing that, they could blame the murder of Gary Hinman on that same group. And Gary Hinman was murdered, and the people that were present there were Charles Manson, Bruce Davis, Bobby Beausoleil, and Susan Atkins. But Manson and Davis left the scene, and then Bobby Beausoleil was the person who was arrested for that. Charles Manson viewed Bobby Beausoleil as a very close informant. I mean, I haven't heard too much of this other than one story, but I think that they were lovers, that they were homosexual lovers. And I say this because of the theory that I'll talk about in a second, but there's also the story of Charles Manson and Bobby Beausoleil tried to recreate the myth of Isis and Osiris, and that Beausoleil would put Manson's penis in his mouth and pretend to bite it off, and so on. So I think that they were involved in a romantic relationship. Just guesswork, a superficial assessment. If that's not true, then I wouldn't be surprised. But I mean, that's something that I've thought about. Not in that way, but I digress from that. Okay, and the theory is that they wanted to commit this series of murders and blame it on the Black Panthers, so then Bobby Beausoleil could get out of jail. He is viewed as a very loyal asset to Charles Manson, and maybe they were romantically involved. Charles Manson's favorite girl, as we said, though, was Squeaky, and it seems like his favorite guy was Bobby Beausoleil. That's utterly ridiculous. That's the dumbest plan in the world, to murder 7 people and then just to get one person out of jail. There's so many other ways you could do that would actually be effective, and thus in turn all of the people that we've been discussing have mostly been incarcerated for the rest of their lives, and some of them, including Charles Manson, have passed away. Another reason why I don't believe this whole thing about how Tex Watson is actually giving the orders is, it was mentioned on the Stones Unturned podcast about how Charles is the name of both Charles Manson and Tex Watson. His name is Charles Watson, and his nickname was Tex. And that when people are talking about Charles or Charlie in the interviews, they actually mean Charles Watson. Perhaps that could happen sometimes, but I think that is a gross underestimation of Charles Manson's influence, and I think on that alone, he certainly wouldn't, I don't think Tex Watson was the mastermind of anything. Yeah, okay, maybe he knew some people who sold drugs, but Tex Watson had his brain fried after tripping on belladonna, and he got on all fours and started walking through a crowd of children pretending to be a school bus, going beep, 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 and his personality really changed after that, and I don't think he was a mastermind of anything. But I would now like to go on to a next comment. I spent about like a bazillion minutes on the last one, so let's get back to another comment here from Jim Witt, who says, I used to think that David Berkowitz and the Zodiac were the same person at one point. For years. That or they were definitely connected somehow. Well, there are similarities between David Berkowitz and the Zodiac Killer. David Berkowitz, of course, who was convicted for the Son of Sam slayings, although Berkowitz confessed to Maury on national television that he only committed 2 of the murders, and that Netflix special, Sons of Sam, was talking about how maybe Berkowitz was telling the truth and he only committed 2 of the murders out of these 6 murders that have been attributed to the Son of Sam, or perhaps Berkowitz knew what Maury wanted to hear and he was just feeding him a bunch of crap to mess with him, for lack of a better term. But the differences and the similarities between the Son of Sam and the Zodiac Killer, let's just do that right now. Both of them committed Lover's Lane murders. Both of them wrote letters in to the police. And something that I didn't get to talk about in that episode that I think is very important, it creates this 3-way relationship, almost like a triangular relationship between the police, the media, and the killer, particularly newspapers, even more particularly than a newspaper, a journalist. Like how the Zodiac Killer is calling out Herb Cain, the Zodiac Killer is mailing stuff to Paul Avery, and the Son of Sam also mailed stuff into the particular journalist that was covering him. There's that triangular relationship, and that wasn't my own original observation. The Netflix special talked about how the Son of Sam had the 3-way relationship between the journalists, the killer, and the police. I did make the connection that is all exactly the same with the Zodiac Killer. So someone is going a step beyond. They aren't just committing crimes. It's not just thrill kills. Someone is bragging about this in letters because they want to taunt the police, they want to taunt the journalists, and there could be numerous reasons for that. Maybe they just want to show off how brilliant they are. Oh, look, I can do brilliant things and not get caught. Maybe. Or it could be something to the contrary, that people are like, I'm trying to get a message out there, and maybe if I can manipulate this journalist in a particular way, then they would respond in a particular way, and they'll put something in the paper that someone else could read. Now, in the most recent episode I did on Zodiac Mondays, I was talking about some other similarities, and Maury looked into a connection between the Manson family and the Son of Sam, and that was a cult called the Children. And we also talked about the Process Church. I read off a couple articles about the Process Church in that most recent episode, as well as the one called Sons of Sam, Manson Family Connection. And one of the descriptions, from none other than religionnews.com, I think was the website that put that out there, said the Process Church, if you get deep enough into their material, is going to say that you need to bring destruction upon humanity because it's a good thing to do. That is almost identical to the global elite descriptions of Luciferianism put out by William Cooper, when he's saying, this is what the global elites believe, and this is what they're trying to do. It's something called the Ancient Magic Religion, which is a belief that Jesus and Lucifer are one and the same, and you liberate humanity by destroying it. So, yeah, okay, I mean, I don't believe that, by the way, and I don't think a lot of people that are connected to these groups, the Process Church or the Children even, would genuinely believe that. Would they go along with it because it's beneficial to their abilities to obtain money, sex, and power? Oh yeah, people do things like that. So, if there's this link among any of those things, the Zodiac Killer, the Manson family, and the Son of Sam, It could be that they were influenced by certain pieces of CIA propaganda. This could be the types of MKUltra brainwashing that I like to talk about, not so much that different people committed the Tate-LaBianca murders and Charles Manson's followers all had false memories of doing it. Instead, I think that it would be more about how these ideas were put into motion by the CIA and the Zodiac killer, Manson, Berkowitz, all caught on to it, whether they were involved with smaller cells of the process church, the splintering effect, if you will, or that they were inspired by some elements of the Church of Satan and Anton LaVey, or the CIA is behind certain types of promotion. They promote certain ideas that will make people behave in a certain way, and sometimes it's very destructive. And that's how you can view them as CIA informants, and that the term informant should be viewed as something very broad. So that leads us to that whole set of factors there, that maybe they were influenced by something related to the CIA to commit these destructive tendencies. Boom. Okay, got it, right? So I think that's where we're going to have to leave it at for now. Is this actually true, though? Possibly. Do I have anything that I can bring into a court of law to show you how the CIA did this? No, but I am very, very suspicious of them. Please stay tuned, and we'll be right back after this message. Bum ba bum 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 ba bum 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 ba bum bum bum. At this time, I would like to talk about some of the ways in which you can help Black Box Online Radio. This channel relies on your support, and the best way you can help out is just by listening to some more content. If you like what you hear, you can hit that like button, subscribe, and share with your friends on social media. But I should also say that Black Box Online Radio now has a Teespring page, and there will be some links in the description box. Please feel free to check out some of the merchandise that is available. Almost all sizes and colors are listed. So, you can also help out by going over to the Zodiac Killer channel and watching the documentary series Obsession into Darkness, parts 1, 2, and 3. I was one of the contributors for that, and you can see some other great Zodiac content on the Zodiac Killer channel. And yes, there will be a part 4 of Obsession into Darkness at some point in the future. And for now, let's get back to the show. Okay, hello, and we are back. I would like to continue onward with a set of questions that came during a discussion I had with Tyler Grover in the comments section here on YouTube. We were exchanging some comments during a recent AMA about the disappearance of Maura Murray. Maura Murray disappeared on February 9th of 2004 after crashing her car in Haverhill, New Hampshire. And Tyler Grover's first comment was, Maura Murray lied about what she was doing. Bought a bunch of booze, a rag and a tailpipe, depressed. Your theory is that an abductor just happened upon her at the right place at the right time, opposed to somebody with such a fragile state of mind running off? Come on, Ned. Pull it together. I guess I'll just read off my response that I wrote here in the comment section. But how does your theory explain the search dogs losing Maura's scent 100 feet from the car? As for the rag and the tailpipe, it is mostly accepted that Maura Murray put it in there to keep smoke from coming out of the tailpipe, suggesting she planned to come back. And Tyler Grover's response was, people don't put rags in the tailpipe of a car to keep the smoke from coming out. They do it to kill themselves. And my response was, to Tyler Grover, I confess I have never had this exact auto issue, but apparently when Maura would park the car, smoke would continue to pour out of the exhaust pipe. The rag was from Maura's emergency kit in the car. She didn't want anyone to see a smoking car on the side of the road. But I would like to ask you, are you suggesting that Maura committed suicide that night, or that she entered the woods voluntarily and succumbed to the elements? Tyler Grover's response was, Hi, Ned. I think the evidence suggests that she was having a breakdown. The days leading up to that seemed to have that feel. During her drive, she slipped off the road, denting up another car, and really lost it. At that point, she was possibly quite intoxicated, then walked or ran off and succumbed to the elements. Anything is possible, but I really think this is most consistent with the facts. Well, Tyler Grover, I would also like to ask you, were you a big follower of the Missing Maura Murray podcast? When I followed their stuff, the podcast that is hosted by Lance and Tim, I almost certainly was in complete agreement with you that Maura Murray died in the woods, that she entered the woods voluntarily for all of these reasons. You have a girl who is in college, when Tyler says she lied about what she was doing, Maura appeared to have somewhat of a breakdown at her job on campus, and someone asked her what's wrong, and she said, "My sister," and then she told her professors that she would be taking a week off from class because of a family emergency. No such family emergency existed. Now, some people instantly think that that is laying the framework for the tandem driver theory, that she had someone else working with her and that they were going to run off together. In short, it was a planned disappearance. I do not accept that at all. I do not think that is true. That one true crime addict guy, we don't say his name on this channel, but he wrote a book called True Crime Addict, and then he went from the tandem driver theory about how he thought Maura Murray was still alive and living in Canada to Maura Murray may have gone to a cabin somewhere, and then her parents had reported her missing, everybody had reported her missing, and then they found her, and then thought that, okay, you've caused this huge disappearance, I mean, you caused this great scandal, and you're just hiding out in the woods on vacation. Some argument happened, and that led to Maura's death. I don't believe the cabin theory, and I don't believe the Canadian new passport theory or whatnot. But as far as Maura Murray going into the woods or committing suicide voluntarily, anything's possible. Absolutely, it's an unsolved case. I began to entertain the abduction theory a little bit more. Not so much as that someone happened upon her at the right time, though. That one might be a little bit different than the theory that I stated in that AMA. Tyler's comment was, your theory is that an abductor just happened upon her at the right place at the right time. Well, not exactly, because, as I said, if it was a woman who had abducted her, then she may have genuinely asked Maura if she wanted a ride, and that she could have driven her somewhere, and then that woman put her in a situation where another man may have done something to cause Maura's death. That woman's boyfriend or husband, or just some other guy that was living with her. The woman might not have even have intentionally tried to cause any harm to Maura, but these are just possibilities. We don't know what happened. It's a missing persons case. And one response, though, that I felt was missing was, if Maura entered the woods voluntarily, why did the search dogs lose her scent? How would they be able to follow her scent for 100 feet from the crash site if she had been walking down the road? I mean, if you're going to make the claim that the sunlight had caused the scent to evaporate, disintegrate, or it no longer existed, why would they be able to follow her from the crash site at all? I mean, 100 feet to roughly the center part of a road. I mean, doesn't that suggest that she entered somebody's car? I do think that no matter what theory, even if it's Maura had a mental breakdown, that she put the rag in the tailpipe to keep smoke from pouring out of the exhaust, because Maura's car was not running very well. If you go to the video from Maura Murray Missing, not Missing Maura Murray, but Maura Murray Missing, the page that was set up by people trying to find her, her father, Fred Murray, even talks about it. And it was mentioned in the podcast episode Fred's Despair, you can also find it there, about saying the car was running on 3 cylinders. It was in bad shape. I think the best part of, well, before I say that one, I need to finish the thought. So, Maura's car apparently would have smoke pour out of the exhaust even when it was in park for a little bit, and she didn't want that to happen, and anyone would find an abandoned car with smoke coming out of it. They might call somebody to do something about it, so she put the rag from her emergency kit in the tailpipe. Now, I think the best part of Tyler Grover's comments is when he says it suggests that she was having a breakdown. During her drive, she slipped off the road, denting up another car. Now, Guy Parody is a researcher in the Maura Murray case, and I don't agree with everything that he says, because he has some really far out and specific accusations. But one of them is that the damage to Maura Murray's Saturn was not from hitting a snowbank. It was not from hitting a tree. It was not from hitting a bunch of rocks. She must have collided with another car. It is the type of damage that would happen is if her vehicle had gone underneath a larger vehicle. And Guy Parody actually proposed that a larger vehicle, maybe a truck or even a school bus, was backing up in reverse, and it gently backed into Maura's car, and then it compressed the hood of the black Saturn. I mean, it is somewhat of a convincing thing when you hear the entirety of the presentation, but I think this is the best part of Tyler's comment because, I mean, if Maura had been recklessly driving and she bumped into somebody's car. I mean, that we're talking about Maura driving voluntarily under someone's car, like she lost control for a second or she was distracted and she tapped somebody's bumper a little bit, causing a dent in her car, and then she just floored it out of there and she's trying to get away from that crime scene and she's hurrying and she's in a panic and her car goes off the road and then she just wants to get away from it and she's just trying to walk down the road or something and she's able to get away for a little bit. That is something. Yeah, she's just maybe trying to hide out for a second, do anything, keep distance from herself in the car because she doesn't want to get into any trouble, and then something could have happened in the woods where that would have led to her death, succumbing to the elements in a natural way. I think it was Travis who left the comment when he thought his theory was that Maura entered the woods voluntarily, tripped over a log or a rock, and she had like a sprained ankle or a broken leg even, and wasn't able to move, and then once again succumbed to the elements. Now, this is accidental death. All of those scenarios would not be suicide, but what happened to Maura Murray, we do not quite know yet, and it's an unsolved case, and I hope that one day we will get answers in that mystery as well. All right, well, thank you to everybody who has left comments here on this channel. I really appreciate each and every one of you. And if you have anything else to say about the Zodiac Killer, the Manson family, the disappearance of Maura Murray, I would love to read your comments down below. Anybody can write the show at BlackBoxOnlineRadio@AOL.com. You can download the show for free at LaunchPad DM. You can also follow on Instagram, and you can get access to that special bonus podcast that I'm always yapping on about. And anybody can follow the show on Facebook, Black Box Online Radio. Please feel free to visit the Teespring page. This show depends on your support. The best way you can support it is just by listening. Maybe visit LaunchPad, download some free episodes of the show, but you can also visit the Teespring page, buy yourself a t-shirt. Remember, being weird is not a crime. And that's all for me now. I will see you on Instagram for the bonus podcast. Until next time.